My name is Corinne Sinclair, and I am 33 years old. My sister said my name like it was a punchline. 12 people at my mother's dinner table laughed. My parents looked at me and said I was the one making the family look bad. So I sat there. I let them laugh. I let my sister talk about her job, her big promotion, her important clients. What none of them knew was that I had something in my bag. One piece of paper. And the moment she mentioned the VA contract, every smile at that table was about to disappear. What happened next took 11 minutes. It took my sister 7 years to build that lie. It took me 11 minutes to take it apart. Welcome back to Hidden Family Revenge. This is the channel where family stories, the ones no one talks about at Sunday dinner, finally get told. If you have ever sat at a table where your own blood made you feel like a stranger, this one is for you. Drop a comment below, hit subscribe, and stay until the end. I was stationed at Fort Liberty, North Carolina. Had been for 4 years. Every morning at 5:30, I laced my boots and ran 3 miles around the perimeter road before the sun turned the pavement into a griddle. By 6:15, I was in the logistics bay reviewing cargo manifests for whatever shipment was going out that week. Pallets of MREs, vehicle parts, medical supplies headed to wherever they were needed. My unit called me Sarge, though my rank was Staff Sergeant. 15 years I had been doing this. 15 years of inventories and load plans and accountability. Every crate logged, every discrepancy flagged, every signature verified. I lived off base in a 1-bedroom apartment that looked exactly the way you would expect a career NCO to keep it. Bed made tight enough to bounce a quarter, dishes put away before I went to sleep, one framed photograph on the nightstand. The photograph was of my grandmother, Pearl, standing on the porch of her house in Ridgeway, Virginia. She was wearing her pearl necklace and squinting into the sun like she was daring it to get brighter. That was the only decoration I owned. Some people fill their homes with evidence that they are loved. I filled mine with evidence that I was organized. I was good at making things run. Schedules, supply chains, systems. What I was not good at was pretending something was fine when it was broken. That is probably why I lasted 15 years in the Army and 0 years in my own family. Then one Tuesday in April, my phone lit up with a Virginia area code. I stared at the screen for 4 seconds. I know because the call timer said 4 seconds before I finally picked up. I grew up in Ridgeway, Virginia, Henry County, the kind of place where everybody knows whose truck is parked where, and whose daughter just got engaged, and whose son just got arrested. My mother, Janet, was the secretary at Ridge Baptist Church and ran the annual canned food drive like a 4-star general runs a campaign. My father, Ray, fixed pipes. He was a plumber for 31 years. Good hands, quiet mouth. My sister, Danielle, was 2 years older and had always been the one who stayed. She stayed in Ridgeway after high school. She stayed close to Mom. She stayed inside the lines my mother drew. I did not. I liked engines more than earrings. I could read a topographical map before I could read a room. When I told my mother in the spring of my senior year that I was going to enlist in the Army, she did not yell. She went quiet for 3 days straight. Did not look at me, did not speak to me, moved around me like I was a piece of furniture she had not decided where to put. On the 4th day, she said one sentence. That is not what people like us do. But my grandmother, Pearl, my mother's own mother, she drove me to the military entrance processing station on a Tuesday morning in June. She wore her pearl necklace, the one she was named for. Her hands shook on the steering wheel the entire 40-minute drive. She did not tell me to turn around. She did not cry. When I got out of the car, she squeezed my wrist and said, "Sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is walk out the door she was told to stay behind." I carried that sentence through basic training, through 3 deployments, through 7 years of silence. The voice on the phone was my mother's. I recognized it the way you recognize a scar, not because you want to, but because your body remembers how it got there. Corinne. She said my name carefully, like she was testing whether it still fit in her mouth. Your father had another episode. The stent from 2 years ago. The doctors are saying it might not hold. He is asking for you. I leaned against the wall of my apartment. Outside, someone was mowing the grass on the parade field. Asking for me? I said. Or you are asking for me. She paused. The pause lasted long enough for me to hear her breathe in and out once. Does it matter? He is your father. She was right about that part. Ray Sinclair was my father. He was also the man who sat in his recliner for 7 years and never once picked up the phone. But he was 62, and his heart was held together with a wire mesh tube and whatever else modern medicine could offer a retired plumber with state insurance. I told her I would come Saturday, not Friday. I was not about to sleep under her roof. I booked a room at the Ridgeway Motor Lodge, 12 minutes outside of town, paid cash, and kept the receipt in my glove box like I was logging a field expense. Old habits. Janet, I said before hanging up. I had not called her mom in 7 years. How many people are coming to this dinner? She hesitated. Just family. In my experience, when my mother said just family, she meant the congregation. The last time I sat at my mother's table was Thanksgiving 2019. I was 26, freshly pinned sergeant, and I had flown in still wearing my uniform because my connecting flight out of Atlanta left no time to change. I walked through the front door in my ACUs, and my mother's eyes went straight to the fabric like it was a stain. Couldn't you have changed first? She said, not quite whispering but not quite loud enough for the living room to hear. Dinner was fine until it was not. My cousin asked what I did in the army, and before I could answer, Danielle leaned forward with her elbows on the table and said, "So how is the camping trip going?" Everybody laughed. Aunt Patricia said, "Oh, Danielle, stop." But she was laughing too. I tried again later. I told them I had been promoted. I said the word sergeant and watched it land on the table like a coin nobody wanted to pick up. My mother turned to Danielle and said, "Tell everyone about your office management certificate. We are so proud." After the dishes were done and the guests had filtered out, I stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at my mother. She was rinsing the good plates, the ones she only used for company. She did not turn around. "You couldn't even let me have this one thing," she said. She meant the dinner. She meant the image. She meant the version of her family where both daughters went to college, both daughters married local boys, both daughters lived within driving distance and brought casseroles to the church potluck. I was the variable she could not control. I drove back to Fort Liberty that night. I did not call again. 7 years is a long time when you measure it in holidays you spend alone. I deployed to Iraq in 2020, Jordan in 2022. I made staff sergeant. I got a unit commendation for streamlining a supply chain that had been hemorrhaging money for 3 fiscal years. I ran my miles every morning. I filed my taxes on time. I called no one in Ridgeway. Grandma Pearl died in October 2022. I found out 2 weeks after the funeral from a girl I went to high school with who saw the obituary and sent me a Facebook message. "Hey, I don't know if you know, but your grandma passed. I'm so sorry." I sat on my bed in my apartment and read that message 6 times. Then I drove 4 hours to the cemetery outside Martinsville. It was a Wednesday. Nobody was there. The flowers on her grave were already wilting. Cheap grocery store carnations, the kind Janet would have picked because they looked fine in photos. I stood in my dress uniform and talked to a headstone. I told her I made staff sergeant. I told her the pearl necklace she left to me was probably sitting in my mother's jewelry drawer. I told her I was doing fine. That last part was mostly true, except for the part where I was standing alone in a cemetery talking to a woman who had been dead for 14 days and nobody thought to tell me. I stayed until the sun dropped behind the ridge. Then I drove back to Fort Liberty, stopped at the gate, showed my ID, and went home. That was the last time I went to Virginia until the phone call. 7 months before that phone call, in September 2025, I tore the cartilage in my left knee during a ruck march. Standard injury, standard referral. The VA sent me to a civilian orthopedic clinic near Fayetteville for an MRI and follow-up. Routine. But when I logged into my Health Vet portal to check the claim status, I saw something that did not add up. There were charges from a clinic I had never heard of. Mountain Laurel Family Health Center, Martinsville, Virginia. 4 physical therapy visits, 2 lab panels, 1 diagnostic imaging session. Total billed to the VA, $47,280, all under my name, all between March and June 2025. The problem was simple. Between March 15th and June 28th of 2025, I was not in Martinsville, Virginia. I was not in the continental United States. I was at Camp Arifjan, Kuwait, loading C-17s in 112-degree heat. I had been trained to reconcile inventory discrepancies. A missing crate of MREs triggers an investigation. A missing $47,000 triggers a different kind. I called my military healthcare advocate the next morning. She told me to document everything and file a complaint with the VA Office of Inspector General. I did it that afternoon. The complaint form took 45 minutes. I attached my billing statements, my deployment orders, and a screenshot of the Mountain Laurel Clinic's public listing. At that point, I did not know who at the clinic was responsible. I did not know until November, when the OIG sent a preliminary inquiry update and I searched the clinic's staff directory. The billing administrator was listed as Danielle Sinclair Pruitt, my sister. Saturday came. I drove up from Fort Liberty on Route 220 through the foothills where the dogwoods were just starting to bloom. I checked into the motor lodge, hung my one clean button down in the bathroom to let the steam smooth it, and changed out of my road clothes. I wore jeans, boots, and a navy blue shirt. No uniform. I was not giving Janet a reason to flinch. The envelope was in my bag. Manila. Unsealed. I had carried it from Fort Liberty with the same care I carried classified shipping manifests. Flat, protected, accounted for. I was not planning to use it. The plan was simple. See Dad, eat dinner, assess whether anything had changed, drive home Sunday morning. The envelope was a contingency. I arrived at 7. The front door was unlocked. Janet opened it before I could knock, wearing pressed slacks and a cream blouse, and my stomach tightened. Grandma Pearl's necklace. The pearls sat against her collarbone like they had always been hers. I looked at them for 2 full seconds. She noticed. She touched them once, a quick self-conscious adjustment, and said, "Come in, honey. Everyone is here." The smell hit me before anything else. Lemon pine sol, my mother's signature. She always deep cleaned before company, scrubbed every surface until the house smelled like a hospital cafeteria. The floors gleamed. The table was set with the good china. 12 place settings, not 4, not 6. 12. This was not a quiet family dinner. This was a production. From the hallway, the grandfather clock struck 7. 1 chime for each year I had been gone. I counted every one. "Where is Dad?" I asked. Janet gestured toward the living room. "He is resting. Go say hello." Ray was sitting in his recliner in the living room, a blanket over his knees even though it was May. He looked smaller than I remembered. His face had thinned, and the skin around his neck hung loose the way it does on men who lose weight they cannot afford to lose. When he saw me, he gripped the armrests and pushed himself up. Slowly. "Hey, Ladybug." His voice cracked on the second word. He had called me that since I was 4, when I used to collect ladybugs in a mason jar on the back porch and release them before dinner like I was running some kind of insect parole program. He hugged me. His arms were thinner, but his grip was still the grip of a man who had spent 3 decades turning pipe wrenches. I could feel his ribs through his flannel shirt. "You look good, Dad." "You look like your grandmother." He said it quietly. Janet was already back in the kitchen, but his eyes flicked toward the door anyway, just to check. The rest of the family arrived in shifts. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Dale came first. Patricia gave me one of those hugs where the arms go around you, but the body stays back. A church hug. Dale shook my hand and said, "You look good, kid." Dale was former Navy. He did not say much, but what he said he meant. 2 of my cousins showed up with their spouses, carrying a Pyrex dish and a bottle of wine. Then Mrs. Hollis from next door, 70 years old, Janet's closest friend. The woman who could turn a whispered detail into front-page news at Ridge Baptist within 48 hours. 12 seats. All filled. I sat at the far end of the table. My bag hung on the coat hook by the front door. Danielle arrived 20 minutes late. She always did. The door opened and in she came. Blowout hair, fitted blazer over a silk blouse, heels clicking on the pine sole floors like punctuation marks. She scanned the room the way a host scans a party, even though this was not her house. "Oh my God, Corinne, you actually came?" She said it with her hand on her chest, like my presence was a pleasant surprise she had not rehearsed in the mirror. She hugged me. Her perfume was expensive and her arms were quick. I noticed she was alone. No husband. I did not ask. My mother swept in behind her and put her arm through Danielle's elbow and said, "Isn't this nice? My girls. Together again." She said it to the room, not to us. It was a line for the audience. Patricia, Mrs. Hollis, the cousins. Janet had staged this. The 12 place settings, the timing, the performance of reunion. I had spent enough time running logistics to recognize a coordinated operation when I was standing inside one. This was not a dinner for Ray. This was a dinner for Janet. She wanted everyone to see that the Sinclair family was fine, whole, fixed. She wanted Mrs. Hollis to report back to the church that the prodigal daughter came home, that everyone was smiling, that the pot roast was excellent and the table was full. I understood the objective. I just was not sure I was willing to play my part. Danielle took the seat to Janet's right, center of the table, directly across from Mrs. Hollis. I was at the end, between Aunt Patricia and the empty stretch of table where nobody sat. The stage was set. The audience was seated. I kept my eyes on my water glass and waited. The jabs started before the salad bowls were cleared. Aunt Patricia leaned over and said, "So, Corinne, still in the army? When are you going to settle down and do something steady?" She said, steady, as if 15 years and 3 deployments were a phase I was going through, like vegetarianism or bangs. 15 years in, Aunt Patty. I think it qualifies. I kept my voice level. No edge. Just a fact, set down on the table alongside the breadbasket. Patricia made a sound that was half laugh, half hum, the way people do when they do not have a comeback, but want you to know they are not convinced. Janet jumped in immediately. "Danielle, tell everyone about the clinic." Like a producer cueing the next segment. Danielle straightened in her seat and launched into it. She had been promoted to billing administrator at Mountain Laurel Family Health Center. She oversaw all claim submissions, insurance, Medicare, VA, TRICARE. She described the complexity of the work the way someone describes climbing a mountain they paid a Sherpa to carry them up. "I basically run the entire financial side now. Without me, the doctors would not know how to file a single claim." Janet beamed. Mrs. Hollis nodded along. Patricia said, "Well, that sounds very impressive." Billing department. 2 words. I picked up my water glass, took a slow sip, and held them in my mouth like a cough drop I was not ready to swallow. Mountain Laurel Family Health Center. Billing administrator. Danielle Sinclair Pruitt. I set the glass back down. My hand was steady. Mrs. Hollis turned to me and asked what it was like working in Army logistics. She asked it the way you ask someone about their stamp collection, politely, expecting nothing. I told her I managed supply chains for military operations overseas. I mentioned Kuwait, the heat, the scale of the cargo we moved, the coordination it took to keep a forward operating base stocked and functional. I was 2 sentences in when Danielle cut across me. "Some of us built something real while you were playing soldier." She said it with a smile. Not a mean smile. Worse. A pitying one. The kind of smile people give you when they genuinely believe they are better than you and want you to know they are not even threatened. The table went quiet for 2 seconds. Then Patricia laughed. A short, surprised laugh, like someone had told a joke she was not expecting to find funny. Mrs. Hollis looked down at her plate. My cousin Kyle cleared his throat and reached for the butter. Janet said nothing. She did not correct Danielle. She did not give her a look. She sat with her hands folded and her mouth closed, and her silence was its own kind of agreement. I did not flinch. I had been in rooms where mortar rounds impacted 300 meters from the building I was standing in. My sister's opinion of my career did not register on any scale I operated. But I was paying attention now. Billing administrator, mountain laurel, playing soldier. And my mother's silence where a defense should have been. 3 data points. I filed them the way I filed everything. Neatly, precisely, in the place where they would be most useful later. The pot roast came out next. Janet's signature. She made it every time she wanted people to say something nice about her. Christmas, Easter, the pastor's birthday, any Sunday she was feeling underappreciated. She set it in the center of the table like a centerpiece, and for a few minutes the conversation shifted to food and weather and Patricia's new grandbaby. I answered questions when asked. My cousin Tyler wanted to know about living in North Carolina. I told him about the apartment, the morning runs, the base routine. Danielle, from across the table. God, that sounds depressing. She did not whisper it. She said it at full volume, the way you say something when you want the whole room to hear it but you want to pretend you were just thinking out loud. And then my mother, refilling Mrs. Hollis's tea glass without looking at me, added, "We can always count on Corinne to make the family look bad." She said it the way she said everything that was designed to cut, wrapped in a smile, delivered in a tone that could pass for teasing if you were not the one bleeding. Patricia chuckled. Mrs. Hollis sipped her tea. Kyle and Tyler stared at their plates. I looked at my father. Ray was sitting at the head of the table with his fork resting against the edge of his plate, his eyes fixed on a spot somewhere between his green beans and the tablecloth. He did not look up. He did not say a word. My father had a stent holding his heart together and still could not find the strength to hold a single sentence for his youngest daughter. I picked up my fork and kept eating. If you have ever sat at a table where your own family made you feel like a ghost, keep watching. Because what I did next was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was something I learned in 15 years of service. The most effective response is the one nobody sees coming. Stay with me. I excused myself between the main course and dessert. Restroom, I said, and nobody looked twice. I did not go to the restroom. I walked down the hallway, past the grandfather clock with its steady tick, to the front door where my bag was hanging on the coat hook. I took it down, unzipped the main pocket, and looked at the manila envelope inside. It was the same envelope I had packed that morning. Same unsealed flap. Same weight. I had told myself on the drive up that I was bringing it as a precaution, the way a soldier brings a sidearm to a diplomatic meeting. You hope you do not need it. You are glad you have it. I stood there in my mother's hallway, back against the wallpaper she had not changed since I was in high school, and listened to the sounds leaking out of the dining room. Forks on china. Danielle's voice, bright and carrying. Laughter at something I could not make out. 6 months ago, when I had searched the Mountain Laurel staff directory and seen my sister's name listed as billing administrator, something in me had not sped up. It had slowed down, like my pulse needed a moment to recalibrate what the word family meant. I had spent 26 years believing that blood protected you, that your own sister would not use your name, your social security number, your military service as a line item on a billing spreadsheet. I had been wrong about a lot of things in my life, but that one carried a particular weight. I touched the envelope, then I closed my bag, hung it back on the hook, and walked to the bathroom to wash my hands. I was not going to use it. That was still the plan. Except standing at the sink, running water over my hands, I could not stop seeing the numbers. I had reviewed them so many times they were branded into my recall the way deployment dates and shipment codes were. March 14th, 2025. Physical therapy evaluation. Mountain Laurel Family Health Center. Patient Corinne Sinclair. Billed $3,200 to the VA. March 21st. Follow-up physical therapy session, 1900. April 2nd. Lumbar imaging panel, 4800. And so on. 11 line items stretching from March to June, totaling $47,280. every single one billed on a date when I was 8,000 miles away, sleeping on a cot in a temporary housing unit in Kuwait, eating powdered eggs at 0500 and spending 12-hour shifts reconciling cargo loads for a forward supply depot. I dried my hands on the towel Janet kept folded on the counter, the decorative one, the one nobody was supposed to use, but I never cared about that rule. I walked back to the hallway. I could have gone straight to the dining room. Instead, I stopped at the coat hook, opened my bag, and slid the envelope partway out. The VA Office of Inspector General letter was on top, dated April 2026, case number in bold type across the header. The summary paragraph confirmed that my complaint had been substantiated and that the case had been referred for prosecution review. Below it, the billing statements. Below those, my deployment order. Effective March 15th through June 28th, 2025. Duty Station Camp Arifjan, Kuwait. 3 documents. 1 name on the billing authorization line. 1 name on the deployment order. Both mine. My mother could make anything look clean. Lemon pine sol and good china and a pot roast in the center. But the numbers underneath were rotten, and I had the paperwork to prove it. I slid the envelope back, closed the bag, hung it on the hook, and went back to the table. Janet smiled when I sat down. Everything all right? Fine, I said. Just needed a minute. Dessert was peach cobbler. Janet served it in the same scalloped dish she had used every summer since I was a kid, the one with the chip on the rim that she always turned toward the wall so nobody would see. The table had loosened up. People were leaning back, refilling coffee, the kind of easy hum that settles over a meal when the food is done and the urgency is gone. Ray caught my eye from the head of the table. You still running in the mornings? It was the first real question he had asked me all night. A small thing, but it was his. Every day, Dad, 5:30. He nodded. I could see him trying to say something else, the way he used to try to say things when I was a kid. Working the words around in his jaw like a piece of tough meat he was not sure he could chew. Whatever it was, he swallowed it. Danielle leaned into the gap. Must be nice having nothing else to worry about. Patricia chuckled. Janet did not react. I set down my fork and looked at Danielle. It was the first time that evening I had looked directly at her. Not a glance, not a passing acknowledgement, but an actual, level look, the kind I gave supply clerks when their numbers did not match. What do you worry about, Danielle? She blinked, recovered. Oh, work. The clinic. It never stops. The clinic. Right. I picked up my coffee, took a sip, said nothing else. Danielle waited a beat for me to follow up. When I did not, she turned back to Mrs. Hollis and picked up whatever thread she had dropped, but I had seen her blink. I filed that too. Patricia brought up Janet's upcoming church fundraiser, a canned food drive and bake sale for the food bank. Janet's face lit up the way it always did when the subject turned to something she could organize. She described the new layout she had designed for the fellowship hall, the donation tiers, the volunteer sign-up sheet she had laminated and posted outside the sanctuary. It was her element. Control, presentation, everything in its place. I cleared my plate and carried it to the kitchen sink. Old habit. In the army, you police your own trash. When I came back to the table, I caught the end of something Danielle had been saying. And she just sits there, like she's too good to talk to us. The table's energy shifted. Patricia looked at her hands. Mrs. Hollis studied her cobbler. And then my father spoke. He turned his whole body toward me, which took effort. I could see the stiffness in his back, the way he gripped the table edge to swivel. And he said, Corinne, just stop making the family look bad. Please. Just for tonight. His voice was not angry. It was tired. The kind of tired that comes from 30 years of choosing the path of least resistance and discovering it still wore you down. His eyes were not on me when he said it. They were on the spot just past my shoulder, the way they always were when he was saying something he knew was wrong but was going to say anyway. I had survived roadside explosions, 100-degree heat, and 2 months of nothing but MREs in a row. But my father asking me to be smaller so his evening could be quieter, that was the one that landed. I stayed seated. I did not push back from the table. I did not raise my voice or storm to the door or do any of the things that my mother would later describe to Mrs. Hollis as Corinne being dramatic. I just sat there and made a decision. Janet leaned toward Patricia to whisper something, and the pearl necklace caught the light from the chandelier. I watched the pearls swing against my mother's collarbone, the same pearls that had rested against Grandma Pearl's neck the morning she drove me to the processing station. Her hands had shaken on the steering wheel the whole way, but she never once told me to turn around. She never asked me to be smaller. She never asked me to make her comfortable at the cost of my own life. My mother wore those pearls the way she wore everything, as decoration, as proof of something, as a prop in whatever story she was telling that week. I looked at the envelope hanging in my bag by the front door. I looked at Danielle, laughing with Mrs. Hollis about some story from the clinic. I looked at my father, who had just asked his youngest daughter to shrink herself for the second time in her life and would probably never understand why that request cost more than he could afford. I was not going to use the envelope. That was what I had told myself in the hallway. But sitting at that table, watching my mother wear my grandmother's pearls while telling the room I was the family's problem, the plan changed. I was not going to start anything. But I was done making myself smaller. If Danielle wanted to talk about her work, I was going to let her. And then I was going to let the work speak for itself. Mrs. Hollis asked Danielle about the clinic. She asked in that polite, church lady way, more small talk than curiosity. But Danielle took it like a spotlight operator had just swung the beam onto her. Honestly, Mrs. Hollis, I practically keep that place alive. Without me, they would not know how to file a single claim. She described the work with the pride of someone who had built a house with her own hands, never mind that the house might have termites. Insurance codes, authorization workflows, payer categories. She talked about VA billing the way I talked about cargo manifests, except I knew the difference between a legitimate load and a fraudulent one. Last year alone, I processed over $200,000 in VA claims. The doctors trust me with everything. I set my coffee cup down, gently. 200,000? Danielle glanced at me. Give or take. Why? She tipped her chin up. Impressed? Just making sure I heard the number right. She held my look for a second. Then she smiled, the same pitying smile from earlier, and turned back to Mrs. Hollis. Anyway, the growth has been unreal. We have tripled our VA patient load in the last 18 months. Tripled. 18 months. The same 18 months during which $47,000 of phantom claims had been filed under the name of a deployed soldier. I lifted my coffee again. The cup was warm. My hand was still. 15 years of handling fragile cargo had taught me that the most important moment in any operation is the moment right before you commit. You check the straps. You verify the weight. You make sure the load is secured. Then you move. Danielle kept going. The attention was a current and she was swimming with it. The doctors at Mountain Laurel cannot function without me. I handle referrals, approvals, the entire VA liaison pipeline. I built the system from scratch. She paused for effect, looking around the table the way a keynote speaker checks the room before the big line. Then she turned to me. You know, Corinne, some of us built something real while you were playing soldier. She said it again, the same sentence from earlier, recycled like a greatest hit, delivered with the same pitying smile. Patricia laughed again. Smaller this time, like she was not sure the joke still worked, but felt obligated to respond. Mrs. Hollis offered a thin smile. Kyle and Tyler stayed very still. I folded my napkin. You handle the VA claims yourself? The authorization codes? The patient intake forms? All of it? Danielle straightened. Every single one. Nobody touches those files but me. Nobody. Nobody. I am the only one with access to the billing system. That was my condition when I took the promotion. If I am going to be responsible, I want to be the only one with the keys. She said it like it was a point of pride, like sole access to a billing system was a corner office with a view. She had just told 12 people. including a church neighbor with a direct line to the entire Ridge Baptist congregation, that she was the sole person responsible for every VA claim that went through Mountain Laurel. Good. I said it quietly, almost to myself. That is what I needed to hear. Danielle frowned. What? Nothing. Good cobbler, Mom. Janet smiled and reached for the serving spoon. The clock in the hallway ticked. I waited. I ran through it in my head the way I ran through a manifest reconciliation, item by item, line by line. Mountain Laurel Family Health Center, Martinsville, Virginia. Billing Administrator, Danielle Sinclair Pruitt. VA claims totaling over $200,000 in the past year, by her own account. Sole access to the billing system, by her own admission. 11 fraudulent line items totaling $47,280 filed under my name on dates I was deployed to Kuwait. VA Office of Inspector General case substantiated, prosecution referral in progress. When I had called the OIG hotline back in November, the intake analyst had asked me to confirm the dates of my deployment. I gave her the exact dates: March 15th through June 28th, 2025. She asked me to confirm that I had never been a patient at Mountain Laurel Family Health Center. I confirmed. She asked me to confirm that I had not authorized anyone to use my information for billing purposes. I confirmed. Then she said, Staff Sergeant, based on what you've provided, we will be opening a formal investigation. The whole call had taken 11 minutes. I looked around the table. Mrs. Hollis, who would tell the women's Bible study group before the week was out. Aunt Patricia, who would call every family member in the phone book. Tyler and Kyle, who would probably post something vague on social media. 12 witnesses. My sister had just stood in front of every one of them and confirmed that she was the sole operator of the system used to steal from the people I served. In the Army, we had a term for that. Self-inflicted wound. The conversation shifted. Dale asked about the weather forecast for the weekend. The kind of question men ask when they want to steer a table away from wherever it is heading. Patricia talked about her garden. For a few minutes, the room felt almost normal. I stood and gathered a few empty dessert plates, carried them to the kitchen. Janet was at the counter, wrapping leftover cobbler in aluminum foil. She looked at me and her face softened into something that might have been genuine. I am glad you came, she said. Maybe this can be a new start. Maybe. I dried a plate and set it in the rack. Then, as if the thought had just occurred to me, Mom, does Danielle's clinic still do a lot of VA work? Or did they shift to something else? Janet waved her hand. Oh, honey, that is her bread and butter. She handles all the VA billing personally. We are so proud of her. She said it the same way she had said it about the office management certificate 7 years ago. Same inflection, same tilt of the head. Proud of the daughter who stayed. Proud of the daughter who ran the billing department. Proud of the daughter who filed $47,000 in fraudulent claims against the VA using the name of the daughter she was not proud of. The grandfather clock ticked in the hallway. In the silence between the ticking and the sound of water in the sink, I could hear everything that had been wrong with this family for 33 years, humming underneath the lemon pine saw like a wire nobody could see. That is great, Mom, I said. I put the dish towel down and went back to the table. Back at the table, the coffee was being refilled, and Danielle was holding court again. Tyler asked her if she had ever thought about going back to school for an accounting degree. Danielle leaned back in her chair and shook her head. Honestly, I do not need to. The system I built at Mountain Laurel is the most efficient billing pipeline that clinic has ever had. I designed it from the ground up. She said the word designed the way an architect might. I took a sip of my coffee. What kind of patients are you billing for mostly? Private insurance or government programs? Danielle waved her hand. Mostly VA and TRICARE. Military patients are our biggest revenue stream, have been for the last 2 years. She paused, and then she turned to me with a smile that I think she believed was clever. You should be thanking me, actually. I keep the lights on for the places that treat people like you. The table gave a polite, scattered laugh. The kind of laugh that happens when people are not sure if something is funny or cruel, but the person who said it is smiling, so they figure it must be fine. I did not laugh. I held my coffee cup and looked at my sister across the table. She had just told a room full of family and neighbors that she was personally responsible for processing VA billing for military patients, that military patients were her clinic's primary revenue source, and that she had built the system herself. Every sentence was a brick. She did not realize she was building a wall around herself. Janet, back from the kitchen, set her hand on Danielle's shoulder. Danielle is the reason that clinic is still open. Without her, those veterans would not have anywhere to go. Danielle nodded, soaking it in. Exactly, Mom. I process every single VA claim that comes through that door. Every authorization code, every billing cycle. That is all me. I stood up. Slowly. I did not slam my chair. I did not raise my voice. I pushed back from the table and walked to the front door where my bag was hanging on the coat hook. The room went quiet behind me. Not silent. Quiet. The kind of quiet where 12 people are watching something happen, but nobody has decided what it is yet. Where are you going? Janet's voice tight. I need something from my bag. I unzipped the main pocket, pulled out the manila envelope, walked back to the table and set it down. Flat, centered, between my plate and Danielle's. It sat there on the tablecloth like a verdict waiting to be read. Danielle. I kept my voice level, the same tone I used when reading a supply discrepancy report to a commanding officer. You just told this entire table that you are the only person who handles VA billing at Mountain Laurel. You said nobody touches those files but you, is that correct? Danielle's smile flickered. Yes? What is this? I want to be sure, because what I have in this envelope depends on that answer. Patricia put down her fork. Dale straightened in his chair. Mrs. Hollis's hand went to her reading glasses, as if whatever was about to happen might require a closer look. The grandfather clock ticked. Nobody moved. You are probably wondering what was in that envelope. So was everyone at that table. But I want you to understand something. I did not drive to Ridgeway to do this. I came because my father was sick. What happened next happened because my sister could not stop talking about the one thing she should have stayed quiet about. If you have ever watched someone dig their own hole in front of a room full of witnesses, keep watching. Danielle's smile was gone now. Corinne, what are you doing? You are being weird. Janet stood up from her chair. Corinne, whatever this is, can it wait? We are having a nice evening. It could have waited, I said. It was waiting. I was going to let it wait. I looked at my father. He was gripping the edge of the table with both hands, his knuckles white. Dad, I came because you were sick. I am glad I did. I am glad I got to see you. But I cannot sit at this table and let someone brag about the very thing that... I stopped. Took a breath. Reset. 15 years of military discipline is not about never getting angry. It is about choosing exactly when to let the anger out and how much of it to show. Danielle. I looked at her. Last chance. Is there anything you want to tell the family before I open this? Danielle stared at the envelope, then at me. Her jaw tightened. Tell them what? I have nothing to hide. The words hung in the dining room like smoke. Somewhere in the back of the house, the ice maker dropped a load of cubes into the tray, a sharp, clattering sound that made Patricia flinch. I nodded once. All right then. I unsealed the envelope and pulled out the first document. I held the billing statement in front of me the way I held a cargo manifest, flat, steady, both hands. I read from it without inflection, without emphasis, without a single change in my breathing, like I was reading inventory out loud at a morning formation. March 14th, 2025, Physical Therapy Evaluation, Mountain Laurel Family Health Center. Patient, Corinne Sinclair. Billed to the VA, $3,200. I turned the page slightly. March 21st, follow-up physical therapy session. Same patient, same clinic. Billed to the VA, $1,900. I could feel 12 pairs of eyes on me, but I did not look up. Not yet. April 2nd. Lumbar Diagnostic Imaging Panel. Patient, Corinne Sinclair, Mountain Laurel Family Health Center. Billed to the VA, $4,800. The only sound in the room was the grandfather clock and my voice. April 15th. Lab work, Comprehensive Metabolic Panel, 2200. May 3rd. Physical therapy session, 1900. May 17th. Follow-up imaging, 3800. I lowered the page, looked up. There are 5 more line items. The total across all 11 claims is $47,280. Every one of them was billed to the Veterans Administration. Every one of them lists me, Corinne Sinclair, as the patient. Every one of them was entered through a single login credential at Mountain Laurel Family Health Center, a credential the OIG investigation traced to one employee. I looked at Danielle. That employee is you. By your own words tonight, you are the only person with access to that system. Danielle's face had gone a color I had never seen on her before. Not red, not white, but something in between, like her skin could not decide whether to flush with anger or drain with fear. I do not know what you think you are trying to. I am not finished. I pulled the second document from the envelope, unfolded it, held it up the same way. This is my deployment order, issued by the United States Army, effective March 15th, 2025 through June 28th, 2025, duty station, Camp Arifjan, Kuwait. I set it on the table next to the billing statement, side by side, like 2 columns on a ledger that did not add up. On the dates those claims were billed, I was not in Martinsville, Virginia. I was not in the state of Virginia. I was not in the continental United States. I was at a forward logistics depot in the Middle East, loading cargo planes in 112-degree heat. I turned to Danielle. My voice did not waver. My volume did not change. You billed the Veterans Administration under my name, Danielle, on dates you knew I was deployed. You filed claims for physical therapy I never received, imaging I never sat for, lab work that was never drawn from my arm. You used my name and my service to steal from the same system that exists to take care of people like me. Danielle shoved her chair back. The legs scraped against the floor with a sound that made everyone wince. That is not... I didn't... You do not understand how billing works, Corinne. The system auto-populates. There are default entries. It is a clerical... The system does not auto-populate the name of a soldier who has never been a patient at your clinic. And it does not auto-populate on dates that coincide with an active deployment 8,000 miles away. My voice was the same volume it had been when I said hello at the door. Danielle's was climbing. The inversion had begun. Janet was on her feet. Corinne, that is enough. She said it the way she said everything that threatened her production, with the force of a woman who had spent her whole life controlling the narrative and was not about to let her youngest daughter rewrite it at the dinner table. Corinne, do not you dare make this family look... I am not the one making the family look bad tonight, Mom. The words came out steady. Not loud. Not shaking. Just factual, like coordinates on a map. Janet's mouth opened, then closed. Patricia gasped. A small, involuntary sound, like air escaping a tire. Dale set his fork down and pressed his hands flat on the table. He was looking at me with an expression I recognized. It was the look one service member gives another when the mission has gone sideways, but the objective is still clear. Mrs. Hollis reached for her purse, not to leave, to ground herself. She was already cataloging every word for the retelling she would deliver in the church parking lot by Wednesday. Danielle tried again. Those were coding errors. The system glitched. I can explain every single one of those charges if you would just... The VA Office of Inspector General does not open formal investigations over coding glitches, Danielle. I pulled the third document from the envelope and placed it face up on the table. The official seal of the Department of Veterans Affairs in the upper left corner, the case number in bold across the top. Their case was substantiated. My complaint was the basis for the investigation. This letter is dated April of this year. The case has been referred for prosecution review. The room had the kind of silence that follows a detonation. Not empty, but stunned. Like the air itself needed a minute to catch up. Danielle stood up so fast her chair hit the wall behind her. This is insane. You come here after 7 years and you do this? At Mom's dinner table? In front of everyone? You are trying to destroy me. Her voice cracked on the last word. Not from sadness, from the specific kind of terror that comes when the life you built on a lie meets the person who has the receipts. I stayed seated. You filed $47,000 in fraudulent claims under the name of a deployed United States soldier. I did not destroy anything. You built this, Danielle. I am just showing the receipt. She pointed at me. Her finger was shaking. You have always been jealous. You left, and now you cannot stand that I actually made something of myself. You are right. I said it calmly. She stopped mid-sentence, confused by the agreement. You did build something real while I was playing soldier. I paused. I have the paperwork right here that shows exactly what you built. The grandfather clock chimed the half-hour. One low, resonant note that cut through the room like a referee's whistle. Danielle's mouth was still open, but no sound came out. The chime faded. The silence was total. I continued reading the next line item from the billing statement. Same tone, same volume, like nothing had interrupted me. Janet sank back into her chair. Her hand went to the pearl necklace, clutching it the way you clutch something when you need to believe you still have something solid to hold on to. Patricia whispered to Dale, "Did you know about this?" Dale looked at her with flat eyes. "Quiet, Patty." I gathered the 3 documents and placed them neatly back into the manila envelope, squared the edges, set the envelope flat on the table. I stood. The OIG investigation is ongoing. I am the complainant. This did not start tonight, and it will not end tonight. I looked at Danielle. She had mascara tracking down her left cheek. Her breathing was ragged. She was not crying out of remorse. She was crying because she had been caught, and she was doing it in front of the 12 people whose opinions she had spent her entire adult life curating. At some point, and based on where this case stands, I expect it will be soon. Someone from the Inspector General's office is going to contact you, Danielle. Probably at the clinic. Probably during business hours. I thought you should hear it from family first. The word family landed on the table heavier than the envelope had. Danielle turned to Janet. Mom, say something. Do something. Janet stared at the table. The same table she had set with 12 place settings and good china and a pot roast in the center. She had built this evening to prove that the Sinclair family was whole. Now she was watching it come apart, and she was doing what she always did when the truth was inconvenient. She was sitting still and saying nothing. That is exactly what she did when I told her I was enlisting, I said. I was not saying it to the room. I was saying it to myself, but I let them hear it. I picked up the envelope and put it in my bag, zipped it closed. I turned to my father. He had not moved. His hands were still on the table, his face the color of old paper. Dad, I am glad I came. I wanted to see you. And I mean it. Take care of yourself. Whatever happens next, take care of yourself. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. 30 years of silence had become a habit he could not break even when it mattered. I looked at Janet. The pearls caught the overhead light, one clean line of iridescence against the hollow of her throat. Grandma Pearl would have believed me, I said. That is why she left those to me, and not to you. Janet's hand went to the necklace. She held it like it might protect her from what I had just said. It would not. Dale stood. He was the only one who did. He did not say a word. He looked at me, and he gave me a single nod. The kind of nod you give across a formation, across a pier, across the distance between 2 people who have both served and know what it costs. I nodded back. At the front door, I turned one last time. The hallway stretched behind me. The wallpaper, the clock, the coat hook, the family I was leaving for the second time in my life. Janet was still in her chair. You told me once I couldn't let you have this one thing, I said. Turns out, Mom, I was the one thing you should have kept. I stepped outside. The night air hit me. Warm Virginia May, dogwoods and cut grass, and the faint hum of cicadas tuning up in the tree line. The lemon pine sol scent stopped at the threshold, like it knew it did not belong out here. Outside, the air was clean. Not the kind of clean my mother manufactured, the kind that just is. I drove with the windows down. Route 220 south, the same road I had come in on, but darker now. The foothills were black shapes against a sky that was just starting to show stars. I did not turn on the radio. I did not call anyone. The only sound was the engine and the wind and the occasional thump of a possum or a deer crossing the road ahead and deciding to think about it for a while. 30 minutes in, my phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text. I pulled into the lot of a closed gas station and looked at the screen. The number was my father's. I had not deleted it in 7 years. The text was short. I keep a picture of you in uniform in my wallet. I should have said that a long time ago. I read it twice. I held the phone in my lap and looked out the windshield at the gas pumps standing in the dark like sentinels. I did not respond. Not because I was angry, not because I did not care, but because I had spent 15 years learning the difference between knowing something and standing up for it. My father knew. He had always known. He kept a photograph, and he kept his mouth shut, and he thought the photograph was enough. It was not. Loving someone in private while letting them be torn apart in public is not love. It is cowardice, dressed up in a wallet-sized frame. I put the phone down, started the engine, drove the rest of the way to the motor lodge in silence. Tomorrow I would check out, drive back to Fort Liberty, and on Monday morning I would lace my boots and run my 3 miles and reconcile whatever manifest was waiting on my desk. The world would not be different, but my place in it would be a little clearer. I spent 7 years waiting for my family to see me. It took one dinner to realize I had been seen the whole time, just not by the people I was waiting for. Grandma Pearl saw me, Uncle Dale saw me, and on that drive home, with the mountains on both sides and nobody in the passenger seat, I finally saw myself too. That is my story. 7 years of silence. 1 dinner. 1 envelope. If this story reminded you of a table where you were made to feel small, or of someone who deserves to know they are not, share this video with them. And if you have been the Corinne at your family's table, drop a comment. I will read it. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I will see you in the next one.